What is up, you guys? Teller checking in for UFC 288. We got the Bantamweight Championship of the World on the line as Henry Cejudo, known as Triple C, possibly going to be known as Quadruple C when this fight's said and done, making his return to the division. We do know that he left this belt, was never dethroned from being the champion, right? He was the flyweight champion, the bantamweight champion. In fact, he took this belt from Marlon Moraes, who was ever since that fight never the same fighter after Cejudo broke him down. We won't dive too much into the main event. You guys know how we do it here. We will finish this video off talking about the main event between Sterling and Cejudo. We're going to be starting our way at the bottom of the card, working our way up towards the top. I can't tell you how we did for UFC Vegas 72 here in this video because I'm recording it before it took place. I'm going to get this video out to you guys nice and early, but you guys know how we do it here. We always hit up the recaps. So hopefully it was another profitable event, and hopefully we hit that free play that I threw towards your guys' way. I can't tell you right now. Some of you guys are probably getting a kick out of it one way or another. We either hit or we didn't. I have a good feeling that we hit that play there. So let's see how that went. And other than that, man, I appreciate all your guys' support out there. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you guys have not already. I promise you guys I got a lot of content coming your guys' way. And in the meantime, if you could, catch me on all my social media as well on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram at MMA Fortune Teller _ on Twitter at the MMA Teller. One quick note as well before we jump into the first fight. If you guys are looking for a new sports book, Bovada.lv is a website I highly recommend. Please reach out to me, whether it's through social media or through email. I got that scrolling below. Reach out to me. I'll get you my referral link. If you sign up through my referral link, you get an added bonus to your account. And most importantly, I'm going to be hooking you guys up with a bunch of free plays. I will hook you guys up. You guys look out for me. I will look out for you. The offer is on the table. In fact, I'll give you two cards for my official plays. Okay, so that is there for you guys. And then before we jump into the first fight, I want to let you know I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you listening to the show here, for tuning in. I appreciate all your guys' support. I know a lot of channels they just throw out there, please like this video, subscribe. It means a lot to me. I just want to let you guys know that you guys truly do mean a lot to me, taking the time to listen to what I got to say about these fights. And I want to let you know that, if you could hit that like button, if you could subscribe, any way you could help support me, it does carry a lot of weight. It does help me out a lot, and it means a lot to me. So thank you guys for that. All right, guys, let's slide over to the first fight.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA Fortune Teller. Yeah.
The MMA Fortune Teller.
The teller.
Making his UFC debut this upcoming Saturday, we got the beautiful monster, Braxton Smith. What a way to be welcomed to the octagon. He'll be taking on Parker Porter, also known as Parker Porter. He's 38 years old now. We've had a lot of fun joking around about Parker Porter throughout the years, but you guys know, all jokes aside, he's got some heavy hands. He's got some decent boxing. I mean, he's a UFC caliber fighter. I mean, you really can't argue that. I mean, he has a handful of wins inside the octagon, so we won't say that he's not a UFC caliber fighter. He's obviously a tough dude. He's been around the block for some time. He now has 21 professional fights under his belt, which somewhat dwarfs Braxton Smith's 6 professional fights. Also, Braxton Smith, in his professional debut, he took on a lot of your guys' favorite fighter, and Chase Sherman. He lost that fight. That was back in 2014. Had a really long layoff and then got back to business in 2022. Since 2022, he's been extremely active. We're talking about 5 fights, all first round knockouts were those 5 fights. So he's been on an absolute tear. You could pull up basically all those fights on YouTube. He's going out there just starching dudes. Some of the knockouts were actually decently impressive as well. Landed a head kick, I believe it was, on Ja'Cory Savage in his last fight. So showing some dexterity as well. Which is, interestingly enough, Porker walked right into a shot from Justin Tafa in his last fight. He was finished. Porter really hasn't been looking so good these days, if you ask me. The way that he walked into Tafa's, I believe it was an overhand right or some type of straight. I believe it was a right hand, though. the way that he walked into that, it was a little bit alarming, if you ask me. And I know that Tafa has the striking background and whatnot, but it was very sloppy the way that he walked into that strike there. And real quick, that was a first round knockout loss there. I mean, so Porter's coming off a first round knockout loss. That's not really the fight that you want to be coming off of, facing a guy like Braxton Smith. And I understand that Braxton Smith still needs to prove a lot more, fighting very low level competition. Porter's a guy that's been there with John Jones, was finished by Jones way back in the day. In fact, I think he's got a little picture of that over here. There you go. He was much more trim back then. Porter's going to have the experience advantage. He's a fighter that has already fought in the UFC. He's going to be more comfortable, you would think. But at the same time, coming off that knockout loss, and as many times as Braxton Smith just stepped down into a cage fight in the last year, I think that Braxton Smith's probably going to be the fighter that's more comfortable in there, if you ask me. I'm taking a dog right from the jump here. I am going to be taking Braxton Smith. He's a plus 150 underdog right now on Bovada.lv. Parker Porter's a minus 185. If this fight goes past the first round, obviously we're going to see Braxton Smith tested. He's a big boy. He carries a lot of weight on him, but he's kind of muscular at the same time. He's a stout dude. He's a little bit shorter than Porter. Porter's a little bit more of the naturally larger guy, I guess you could say, the larger frame. But I wouldn't really say the more naturally larger guy, because Braxton Smith's just a stout dude, but he's thick, man. He's wide. And maybe his cardio holds up if it goes past the first round, but maybe it doesn't even go past the first round. Give me Smith by first round knockout. In the flyweight division, we got Zhalgas Zhumagulov taking the UFC newcomer Rafael Estevam. Estevam coming off a Dana White's Contender Series victory. It was a fun fight to watch. If you guys missed that one, I would recommend you guys go check it out. It was a fun fight, and his opponent was very tough. And I hope we get to see him in the octagon one day. He's a very fun fighter to watch. Unfortunately, things did not go his way. He was finished. Rafael Estevam, a little bit more of the naturally larger fighter when they squared off, and really showed that he's a well-rounded fighter. He has some good grappling. And, he's 26 years old. He's going to be facing off with Zhalgas here. Zhalgas, now 34 years old, has been taking a lot of L's, but he has been fighting, upper echelon fighters in the division, if you want to be honest. Zhalgas not getting his hand raised, but taking losses to guys like Charles Johnson, Jeffrey Molina, Manil Cape, had the victory over Jerome Rivera. We know Rivera is not a UFC caliber fighter, but Zhalgas went in there and did what he should have done. He submitted him within a couple minutes there, pulled off the sub, and then a loss to Amir Albalzi and Julian Paiva before that. All respectable names. And then even if you want to go back to his last couple victories before that, victories over Ali Bagatinov and Tager Ulanbekov, and then Tyson Nam as well. So some respectable names there as well. Zhalgas is a very strong fighter. He's a well-rounded fighter. He could strike. He has some grappling skills, but he is 34 years old. And, there's a lot of new blood coming into the octagon. I think that Rafael Estevam has the potential to be some of that promising new blood. Again, he seemed well-rounded. I like the fact that he has a 2.5-inch reach advantage here on the feet. Zhalgas on the feet, he can hold his own to an extent, but just always seems to come a little bit short in those exchanges. He just doesn't really land as much as his opponents, and I have a feeling we could see Rafael kind of do his thing there, and maybe Rafael gets this fight down to the mat where we saw that he has he has good grappling and he can potentially control Zhalgas down there. I don't know if that would be the case, but overall, I feel more comfortable taking Rafael here. The age of Zhalgas right now, being 34 years old, he was never really the quickest fighter in there. I could see him starting to slow down a little bit for the flyweight division. That could be a problem. I feel more comfortable taking Rafael in this position. I just have a feeling that he rises to the occasion. And once again, we see Zhalgas come up a little bit short. This isn't a match against, name slipping my mind, my favorite fighter here, who I'm always praising, Jerome Rivera. This isn't a match against a guy like Jerome Rivera. I do not see Rafael Estevam being in over his head and just giving up a quick sub. Rafael is a polished jiu-jitsu player. He could strike. He could do a little bit of it all. Maybe this fight plays out somewhat close, but at the end of the day, yes, give me Rafael to win his UFC debut against a somewhat respected UFC veteran here. We take a look at the betting line. Rafael Estevam is a minus 155 favorite. The comeback on Zhalgas at plus 130. Pretty interesting, right? To see a guy coming in younger, needing to still prove himself, but coming in as the favorite against a guy like Zhalgas. I think that kind of says it all, right? We take a look at the betting line where the UFC newcomer will be the favorite. He's a minus 155 favorite. Zhalgas a plus 129. I think that says a lot of what we think about Zhalgas. Zhalgas has gotten his feet wet many a times in the octagon. He has a handful of wins over some big names, but it's been a while since we've seen something like that. And again, people not really respecting that Jerome Rivera victory. And I think that the line is accurate. It's accurate enough. And I will side with Rafael Estevam. I think he gets the job done. Probably a decision victory for him. Zhalgas is decently tough. But I feel more comfortable siding with Estevam there for sure. In the middleweight division, we got Ikram Aliskerov taking on Phil Hawes. Aliskerov, we saw him just have a quick victory on Dana White's Contender Series. And he went into that fight a little bit hyped up, right? Because essentially people look at him like he's undefeated because his only loss came by way of Khamzat Chimaev, a fighter that obviously has a lot of respect in the game. But besides that, Aliskerov has been a very good fighter. I mean, we've seen that he's a very fine-tuned fighter. He's well-rounded. He could grapple. He has good cardio. He could push the pace. He has decent striking as well. He's showing to be a well-rounded fighter. He's 30 years old, coming into the UFC almost in his prime. On the other hand, you got Phil Hawes. He's 34 years old now. And, I mean, we've seen Phil Hawes getting starched when he was still a young buck. If you remember back when he was fighting on Dana White's Contender Series or back on The Ultimate Fighter a long time ago trying to get into the house. But you know what? Good for Phil Hawes because he did put things together and he's had some big-time victories inside the octagon as well. The way I look at Phil Hawes, he kind of reminds me of like a high-maintenance car, right? Think of like, I don't know if you want to say a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, but he's a fine... how do you want to say that? He's a fine-tuned car, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense. You guys catch my drift, though. He's like a car that can really produce when it's hitting on all cylinders. But he's the type of car that's high maintenance and is not the most reliable. That's how I'll put it to you guys. He is not the most reliable fighter. His gas tank is not the best. We've seen him fade late in fights. I mean, yeah, he'll push the pace. He'll go to war. But he kind of ends up being the fighter for the most part that starts to eat those big shots and can be put out. And as of recently, we've seen him put out, right? I mean, you have to think about what Chris Curtis just did to him recently, which was what? That was in mid 2021. He got put up by Chris Curtis. He just got knocked out by Roman Dolidze in the first round. In the last 3 fights, he was put out twice. He had the knockout victory over Deron Winn. Deron Winn was severely undersized and showed to have the heart of a lion. I mean, he was just outmatched. But props to Haas for dropping the elbows that he did in the fight. On the feet, he was throwing these nasty stepping elbows. Again, when Haas is hitting on all cylinders, he's a talented fighter. He has nasty Muay Thai. He has the wrestling background. He's very explosive, very, very quick twitched, but he carries a lot of muscle mass. And, I worry about how he would look in this fight as it goes late because I feel pretty damn confident that Aliskerov can go for 15 minutes. I just, we haven't seen him fight in the octagon in a war going late in a fight, but he's a fighter that I really feel possesses that type of potential. Real quick, we could take a look at what he's done outside the UFC besides just that Dana White's Contender Series victory, which he took out Mario Souza, a somewhat respected fighter, went out there, subbed him like it was nothing. Before that, victory over Noshan Burrell. Miro Djurkovic submitted him in the second round, submitted Dennis Teolinin in the third round, knocked out Diego Gonzalez in the third round. So, finishes in the third round, showing that he could dig deep. And then again, we talked about that knockout loss that he had against Khamzat Chimaev. That was that nasty uppercut, I believe, that Khamzat hit him at some type of step-in uppercut. It was something nasty. You could pull that up on YouTube. Not a lot of big names on his resume, but when you watch him perform, you could definitely tell that he's a high caliber fighter. Phil Hawes is going to have a 1.5 reach advantage, if you would. Both men the same height. Phil Hawes, again, the mileage a little bit catching up to him. Phil Hawes, he has 16 professional fights, but like I said, I remember back when he only had 5-6 fights watching the guy, as he was trying to make his way to the UFC, and he was taking damage even back then. You take a look at his 4 losses, and he's been damaged in some of those losses, the majority of all those losses there. So I think Ikram could hurt him on the feet late if he starts to tire out. Phil Hawes has the wrestling pedigree, but you know what, as far as the jiu-jitsu goes and the submission skills go, I'll favor the Dagestani there as well. So yeah, I am going to be taking Ikram Aliskerov in his UFC debut against a fighter that is to be respected in Hawes. But let's see what the odds makers are thinking about this fight, and we'll see what kind of respect Hawes is getting on his name here. Phil Hawes is going to be a plus 175 underdog currently. Remember now, we're taking a look at these odds about a week out from the fight, so we'll see how they move. But Ikram Aliskerov is a minus 218 right now. So, you know, not a lot of respect being thrown towards Hawes' way in this matchup here, or maybe people just putting a lot of respect on Aliskerov. You know, essentially a minus 220 line, decently high. We know that Phil Hawes is dangerous here. Not sure if I'm crazy about the line, but I do like Ikram to get the job done here. I want to be clear on that. I do have him winning this fight, and this fight can go a variety of ways, and they all still kind of favor Ikram in my opinion. So Claudio Ribeiro had a big knockout victory on Dana White's Contender Series, and then he gets welcomed to the UFC by Abdul Razak Al Hassan, which, you know, we all know Al Hassan is an absolute killer. I mean, he either goes out in a shield or he takes you out. I mean, the guy is just a nasty striker. What a way to be welcomed to the UFC. That fight did not go Claudio's way, but at the same time, I think that we still all give him a good amount of respect. He went into that fight, did not hesitate at all. He was going in there looking to land his own KO shot, and I think that we could see that he possesses some serious power, and he's very quick with his hands and his striking. Now, Joseph Holmes, ugly man, Joe Holmes. Yeah, I don't want to be too harsh here. You know, as far as the striking goes, I have not been impressed with anything that I've seen from him. In fact, when we've seen him have success, for the most part throughout his career, you know, he's used his grappling and his size to kind of bully some of the opponents there. Now, he has already had a victory inside the octagon, but that was against Alen Amadovsky. He submitted him in the first round, and he did hurt him on the feet. But let's be honest, Alen Amadovsky is not a UFC caliber fighter. And in fact, I don't believe he ever got that UFC victory under his belt. Came into the UFC, I believe, 8-0 with all these first-round knockouts and all this stuff, but it was against nobodies, and he came into the UFC, and I'm not trying to throw any shade towards his way, but I just don't feel he was a UFC caliber fighter. I'm sure he's not on the roster these days. So my point is I don't put too much merit into that victory that Holmes had against him. I think that Claudio Ribeiro is going to be a threat to him on the feet. I think that there's some real potential that Ribeiro hurts Holmes on the feet and potentially knocks him out. Joseph Holmes also has a loss against Jamie Pickett. You know, take that for what you will. It's really, the book's not out on Jamie Pickett. He did show some toughness against Bo Nickel there and his last fight, but he's not a fighter that's on that level. But we don't really know what level exactly Claudio is on. We just know that he's a very dangerous striker. He's 30 years old. He's 10-3 as a pro. And real quick, just to show you what he's been doing, had that knockout against Ivan Venezuela on the show. Before that, had a finish in the 5th round, so showing he could dig deep late in fights too. And just a bunch of knockouts all scattered throughout his resume. Submission early on as well. He's a finisher. Again, he's a fighter that goes out looking to end the fight, and I expect him to do that here. And I think that he's actually going to have some success. I just think that Holmes is a little slow. You know, if this fight goes a little bit later on and Claudio loses a little bit of oomph in his shots, maybe Holmes could try to hang on him a little bit in the clinch, maybe sneak in a little inside trip, get on top of him, you know, maybe. But I don't really feel too confident about that. And again, not to be harsh, but I just haven't been a big fan from what I've seen from Holmes. Holmes is a plus 170 underdog. Claudio Ribeiro is a minus 210 favorite. I feel more comfortable taking Claudio, even with a tag next to his name that's a tad bit more than a 2-1 favorite. I still feel more comfortable there. That just shows you kind of what I think about Joseph Holmes. But again, Joseph Holmes, you know, he is only 27 years old, I believe, too. So room for growth. He has a good frame. He has an 80-inch reach. He'll have about a 3-inch reach advantage here, too. But I don't even think he knows how to pump that jab from the outside, at least not against a guy like Claudio. I have a feeling Claudio will close the distance off and land some big shots. We'll see how it plays out. But give me Claudio, and I'll take Claudio by finish. We got Matt Frevola taking on Drew Dober. You guys know we had the pleasure to chat it up with the steamroller back in the day. You know, he was sitting on the patio with Mama Dukes, and definitely nothing but respect towards Frevola's way. I do appreciate him taking the time, and he was just one of the more chill dudes we had the pleasure to chat it up with. You know, I've been pleasantly surprised with the way that Matt Frevola's career has went in the UFC. He's had some ups and downs, but he definitely has shown to be a very tough outing for anybody. Going to a decision against Arman Sarukian. Unfortunately, he was finished by Terrence McKinney after that, but bounces back with 2 victories in a row, takes out Gennaro Valdez and Atman Azatar. Both of those fights, first-round knockouts, so he's really starting to get his groove going on the feet as well. Has a victory over Jalen Turner back in the day as well. Jalen Turner, his wrestling and his takedown defense was really not near what it is today, so do understand that at the same time. But when we're talking Drew Dober, Drew Dober is an absolute technician on the feet. We're talking top-tier striking for the division. The narrative for Drew Dober has always been that he needed his grappling to catch up to his striking. And, he's been working on that. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but at the same time, I don't really feel that Matt Frevola is the type of guy that's going to go out here and just use his wrestling and try to blanket a guy like Drew Dober. I think that Frevola is falling in love with his striking, and I just have a gut feeling that he's going to go out here and throw some bombs towards Dober's way, and I think that could cost him. I mean, I really do. Drew Dober is an excellent counter puncher. And even if Frevola does look to implement the wrestling, it's not like Drew Dober is just a slouch there. We talked about the fact he's been working on that aspect of his game, and I think that he could have a lot of success stuffing some takedowns, and that would probably diminish the tank a little bit of Frevola, and I think that Dober will get his shots off. Listen, it's not going to be a walk in the park for Dober either. Frevola is a tough test, and if Frevola can have success in mixing things up, changing levels, he's live in this fight, but I do feel that Drew Dober's striking is going to be just a little too much here. He's 34 years old, but he's still in top-notch shape. He takes very good care of himself. Both guys' his statures are very similar, and I got Drew Dober just using his striking to maintain that top 15 spot, and unfortunately for Frevola, he ain't cracking the top 15 this upcoming weekend, in my opinion. And we'll take a look at the betting line here, and you will see that Drew Dober is a minus 210 favorite. The comeback from Frevola at plus 170, 171, and that's a common number that we've been seeing. That is a common number we've been seeing throughout this card. Not really crazy about the minus 210 line. Again, Frevola is a dog. He has power. He can wrestle. But at the end of the day, I'll still side with the 210 on Dober. I feel like this is his fight. In the light heavyweight division, we got Devin, the Brown Bear, Clark taking on Kennedy and Cejudo. How about Kennedy? Still only 30 years old. I feel like he's been around for some time, and he's just cruising into the prime of his career. We know that Kennedy is a fighter that's always fun to watch. He has a freakish 83-inch reach. He almost has a 10-inch reach advantage going into this fight, and that's nothing really new for him. Essentially, he has an 8-inch reach advantage, and I think that he has the potential to really give Clark some problems there. Clark does possess power, but he's not the most technical. He puts a lot of oomph into his shots, kind of telegraphs them. I think that Kennedy should see them coming, and in the meantime, I think that Devin Clark will be walking into the straight shots of Kennedy. So I do believe that Clark could be in trouble on the feet here. Can Clark sneak in some takedowns? We know that he likes to push his opponents up against the cage and try to work some grappling. Real quick, I mean, you take a look. Kennedy and Cejudo has put out an 80% takedown defensive rate in the octagon. That's a very high percentage as far as stuff in the takedowns go. Devin Clark has a 34% takedown percent offensively. So, I mean, not a high rate either. You just look at those numbers. I mean, looking at these guys on tape, I have a feeling that Clark is going to have some trouble getting this fight down to the mat, and I think he's going to have some trouble at range as well. You take a look at what they've been doing from the striking side of things. Kennedy landing 4.63 strikes per minute compared to Clark's 2.91. We know that Kennedy does put a high rate out there. He does absorb more at the same time, absorbing 4.19 compared to Clark's 2.71. It's to be expected. I mean, we've seen Kennedy in some crazy wars, and we've seen that him eat some shots and give them back. One thing that I think we could say about Kennedy as well is he has a granite jaw. He could really take a shot. We've seen him take some big time shots before, continuously marching forward and eventually breaking some of those opponents that I'm referring to. Real quick, You think about, okay, he's coming off that knockout victory against Ian Cutelaba, a knockout of Carl Robertson. The Nikolai Negumereanu fight, that was a tough one. I believe there was a point deduction, and a lot of people felt that that really should have been Kennedy's fight if you really want to cut to the chase. Now, he was knocked out against Da Un Jung, but I'm still telling you, the chin is solid. I'm telling you guys. If you think about the damage that he took against Carlos Ulberg early on and just continuously walked forward and eventually broke him and got the knockout, Kennedy's a solid fighter. As far as Devin Clark goes, I'm always a fan of watching him fight just based on what I've seen with him and his dad cornering him, or his dad just yelling from outside the cage. I think that's always a fun sight. You got to respect his pops there. And Clark brings the fight, and he's been fortunate enough to have hung around the UFC as long as he has. But I think that he's going to run into some trouble here because, again, the length that Kennedy has, the southpaw stance and decent head movement, and he just marches forward and throws those straight shots. That's the thing I like. He knows how to use his range and his reach advantage, and I think that he will probably be using that in this fight in order to really inflict some damage here. So give me Kennedy and Nzechukwu, and we'll take a look at the betting odds here, where you will see that Kennedy is a -220, the comeback on Clark at +169, 170. Again, somewhat of a similar line that we've been talking about, and I think the value's on Kennedy even at -220. I think that this is his fight. I think he gets the job done. Marina Rodriguez taking on Virna Jandiroba. Now, this very much a striker versus grappling matchup. Marina Rodriguez has nasty Muay Thai. Virna Jandiroba has nasty Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This is a stylistic clash. And I also want to say this. I've heard a lot of you guys complaining about the level of striking in women's mixed martial arts for some time. And I hear what you guys are saying and tend to agree. It's not even near the level of men's mixed martial arts. But I'll say this much too. There are some women that are doing it good, man. There's some women that have some really nasty striking, and Marina Rodriguez is one of those females. She's very fluid with her striking. She's very quick. She's dangerous. And, I think that she's going to have some real potential to go out here and hurt Virna Jandiroba on the feet, because Virna, her striking is not up to par, in my opinion. She's very slow, but she's a very solid grappler. She has good offensive wrestling as well. She's not just a fighter that has Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu but can never really get the fight down to the mat. She's a fighter that will get a hold of a single leg, and she'll get her opponent down to the mat where she could exploit their grappling. And I think that's what she's going to have to do in this matchup. One fight that comes to mind, when Marina Rodriguez had the nasty, the brutal knockout of Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas had success in the first round. She had a takedown, and we know Amanda Ribas, a very decorated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a fighter that's also faced off against Virna. If Amanda Ribas would have stuck to that route, or stuck to that, excuse me, I don't know why that's slipping my mind right there. If she would have stuck to that game plan, she would have had success in that fight, in my opinion. She got a little bit too comfortable striking with the fighter that's just a way more polished striker. We know Amanda Ribas has really fallen in love with her striking, even still recently. She loves to go to war, but you can't do that against a girl like Marina Rodriguez, and Marina Rodriguez showed that, knocked her out there in the second round. But the point I want to make is if Virna Jandiroba goes into this fight and uses that type of game plan, there is potential that she can solidify a takedown and maybe finish the fight down in the mat, or if she continuously just goes to that single leg and pushes Marina against the cage, and if she can have success getting this fight down to the mat using her jiu-jitsu to control Marina, she could easily take this fight. That being said, Marina Rodriguez, to me, is a fighter that's going to be coming into this match here very hungry. She's going to be very dangerous in the feet, and I think that she's going to have some success against Jandiroba, and I'm not confident enough in Jandiroba just to get those takedowns and really do work down in the mat. She's a little stiff at times, and I think that Marina's movement will keep her out of harm's way. I think that Marina Rodriguez is going to land some big shots in this fight, and I couldn't tell you what kind of big shot because she's diverse with her attack. She might drop some elbows. She might drop a knee, some nasty leg kicks. She might chop her down. Marina Rodriguez mixes things up nasty. So... and real quick, you see that Marina Rodriguez almost doubling the amount of strikes landed per minute on the feet, while absorbing less still. So as far as that goes, and then as far as the grappling goes, Marina Rodriguez with a 65% takedown defense rate throughout her UFC career. Jandiroba with a 38% offensive takedown. So not the best number there, but she has snuck in some takedowns, and if she does, it could be a very dangerous situation for Marina to be in there. So let's take a look at the betting line here. Marina Rodriguez a -179 or -180. I don't like those odd numbers there, but a -180 favorite. The comeback on Jandiroba at +145, and I don't say that Marina Rodriguez. I don't pick her here with that line. I don't say it with an overwhelming amount of confidence. I do believe that Jandiroba is potentially live in this matchup based on the fact that she has a path to victory with her jiu-jitsu and her grappling. Again, this is a stylistic clash, but I like Marina Rodriguez to get the job done. -179. I mean, we've been seeing recently, you got to be careful with women's mixed martial arts. So I don't know about that. We got the shoot box product, Willie Boy Daniel Santos taking on Johnny Munoz. Willie Cat Daniel Santos, man, he had a tough UFC debut, if you guys remember. But he did have a tough task in front of him as well, as he was set to face off with Julio Arce. He did lose that fight. I believe he even took that fight on short notice, I believe. But he bounced back with a big-time victory, knocking out John Castaneda. And John Castaneda was a pretty decent favorite going into that match too. So, Willie Boy kind of shook things up there. He showed that he does have the potential to hurt his opponent on the feet. I think that he's going to have potential success on the feet in this matchup against Johnny Munoz here as well. Johnny Munoz recently knocked out against Tony Gravely. Tony Gravely does have some decent boxing, but he really hasn't been putting it together that well as of recently. And that knockout loss, quite frankly, looks even worse these days. He did bounce back with a victory over Ludovic Shalinian, took a decision victory there. We know Shalinian more of a grappling type of fighter. I would say that Johnny Munoz is more of a grappling-based fighter as well. And I think that Johnny could be in some trouble here. I think that Daniel Santos will get the better of the striking, and I think that Santos can keep this fight on the feet. He's a little bit undersized compared to Munoz. We'll see if Munoz can use the size advantage in the cage, but I still am going to side with Daniel Santos here. I'll make the pick quick for you here. I'm not going to go on too much about that fight. I would say that's one of the I wouldn't say more lackluster. I think the fight could be a fun fight to watch, but not the biggest of names there compared to the rest of the guys we're going to be talking about on this card. Daniel Santos, a -165 favorite. Comeback on Munoz at +135. Not really crazy about Santos at -165 there. I think that Johnny Munoz has potential to use his grappling and his size and to take some rounds and take the fight potentially. Maybe Santos should be more like a -150. But we'll see how the fight plays out. In the welterweight division, Khaos Williams will be welcoming Rolando Bedoya, the Peruvian, to the UFC. This is a tough task for Rolando. He's shown to be a tough fighter, but let me be very clear. Khaos Williams, one of the more underrated fighters fighting under the UFC banner, in my opinion. He's only 29 years old still. He has a 77-inch reach for the welterweight division, which is a nice reach there. He has nice boxing skills. He's a dangerous striker. He possesses nasty power. And I also want to mention, I thought that he won his last fight against Randy Brown. He doesn't get the decision there, but I thought that he won that fight. Before that, he knocks out Miguel Baeza, has a decision victory over Matthew Semmelsberger. That does hold some weight these days. We know that Semmelsberger is a solid fighter. Then you have to go back to his last loss, which was back in 2020, where he lost to Michel Pereira. Before that, a knockout victory over Abdul Razak Al-Hassan. We talked about him earlier. Knockout victory over Alex Morono, which was in his UFC debut. Can the Peruvian make a statement in his UFC debut similarly to what Khaos Williams did? I'm not really feeling it, to be honest with you. I think that Khaos is really going to give him some problems on the feet, breaking down tape on the Peruvian. He's tough. He decently well-rounded, but carries excess weight. He doesn't even look like he's in as good a shape as he could be in. Seems a little slow. I seen him tagged a little bit on the feet, even in fights that he ended up winning. He ate some shots, and I think that against a guy like Khaos Williams, that's not really a good recipe. I think that you could really run into some trouble, and you could really get hurt there. Khaos Williams looking to be in phenomenal shape as well. And, it's a shame that Khaos hasn't been as active as I feel that he could be, because he's a fighter that really does have potential to kind of stir things up. I think he has a cool personality, and he could carve a nice little name out for himself in the game. Brush his shoulders with a lot of solid fighters, big name fighters, and hopefully we start to see him pick it up. He's only 29 years old. I'm going to say Khaos Williams handles this fight here against the newcomer. I think that he's just better anywhere that this fight goes, I guess you could essentially say. I mean, Rolando doesn't really stand out to me too much when I take a look at his resume. He's 14-1. I mean, he's had some nice subs and whatnot, and the competition's okay. It's whatever. But give me Khaos Williams. That's what I'm definitely feeling. Khaos Williams is obviously going to be the favorite here. Let's take a look at what this line's looking like here. Khaos Williams is... They disrespected him over here in Bovada. They called him Kalen Williams, but be assured that is his name here. But they need to recognize Khaos is his new name, right? I guess that's his nickname. Maybe Kalen's his real name, but his legal name. But he's definitely Khaos to us. He's always causing chaos inside the octagon. He's a -310 favorite, and I think that line's warranted from what we've seen from these fighters up until this point. Unless Rolando steps foot down in the weigh-ins, looks in the best shape that he's ever been in, and then he goes in the cage and performs. Until then, -310 is an accurate line. So it looks like Bryce Mitchell did something to really irritate the UFC brass, because Bryce Mitchell now gets Movsar Evloev after just taking on the extremely dangerous Ilia Topuria. If you ask me, Movsar and Topuria are two of the top fighters that you don't want to fight in this division, in the featherweight division, especially if you're not fighting for the belt or you're not fighting for a title eliminator fight. They're really fighters that you would want to avoid. You could imagine. They know how to get their hand raised. Movsar still undefeated, 16-0. The same could be said for Ilia Topuria, two undefeated fighters. Not that being undefeated says everything these days, but these are two fighters that are legitimate undefeated fighters. I mean, these guys they know how to get the job done. Bryce Mitchell was undefeated up until he lost that Topuria fight. And you know what, man? Not to be too harsh on him, I didn't really like the route he went when he took that loss, started blaming the sickness that he had. And I'm sure that he was telling the truth and whatnot, but maybe better off just keeping that on the hush. And, we had an official play on Topuria against Bryce Mitchell. So you know how I felt there. I love the grappling and the pace that Bryce can push upon his opponents, but when he's matched up against fighters like Movsar and Topuria, they're very bad stylistic matchups, because they can grapple like anybody, like the best of them, I would say. And they also have some good striking, and Bryce Mitchell's striking needs to be refined and worked on. He's not training at any of the top gyms. So, I mean, I don't really expect to see too much growth there, to be honest. He's stubborn. He's still out in Kentucky or Arkansas, I believe it is. And, on the other hand, you got a guy like Movsar who travels the globe to go all the way from one side of the world, of Earth, all the way to the other side. In fact, I used to live right down the street. You guys know that. But going over to Coconut Creek American Top Team and getting some of the best training that you can get point blank. So, a guy like Movsar, man, I think he's just going to take those strides to the next level. And again, he should be able to handle the pace that Bryce will push on him. When Bryce will try to close the distance, try to get that takedown, try to work the grappling, Movsar can do that all day. Movsar is a very polished grappler, in fact. And also, if Bryce wants to go that route, I actually think that Movsar will get the better of those grappling exchanges. I think that he'll get the better of the striking exchanges. I like Movsar here. Bryce has the potential to make it ugly. Maybe he can push this to be a close fight. Maybe there is a lot of truth to what he was saying, and maybe that flu thing he had really messed him up, and maybe on a better day he could have put up a better fight against Topuria. But I think that Topuria loss kind of showed how he's going to perform against these types of fighters. Movsar only 29 years old. Bryce only 28 years old too. Both these fighters have a bright future ahead of them. And with that being said, I like Movsar to get the job done here. 2.5-inch reach advantage as well, even though he's 3 inches shorter. I really like his frame, and he pumps the jab nice. I think he can bloody Bryce up here. I do like Movsar to get the job done here. I'll favor this fight going to a decision more so. I think that's the more realistic possibility. And real quick, I just want to take a look at some of the work that these fighters have been doing inside the octagon. As far as their striking goes, Movsar almost doubling the amount of significant strikes landed per minute on the feet. As far as how much they're absorbing, both have very low numbers. Bryce at 1.71, that's very impressive, because he's usually smothering his opponents and not letting them touch him at all. But Movsar also 2.79. He's very defensively sound. And I don't know, as far as the grappling goes, you guys know these guys can push the pace. And but Movsar actually with the 4.83 takedowns per 15 minutes to Bryce's 3.26. Again, I do edge Movsar in the grappling as well. So I will be siding with Movsar. Now let's go take a look at what this line's talking about. I'm actually interested here. Movsar is a minus 275 favorite. Once again, coming in as a big favorite, even against a respected fighter in Bryce Mitchell. It's a high line, minus 275. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, yeah, I'm loving this minus 275 line. That's a high line. Maybe there's more value on the Mitchell plus 205 line. I don't know. I just think that Movsar gets the job done there. So, I don't want to lead you guys the wrong way. We'll see if Bryce can make this ugly. In the featherweight division, Gracie makes his long-awaited return to the octagon since getting a beatdown by Cub Swanson. He's taking on Charles Jourdain. And I'll tell you a little bit of something about that fight. I lost some money on it. And, that was a weekend that I'll never forget, man. I had a fun time. It was one of those types of trips. I'll make this quick, but one of those types of trips, you just do by yourself, man. I hopped in the whip, did a little road trip over to Tampa, and had a hell of a time. Was out partying late, crashing the car. I had a dope rental that I got, a big old rental. Got a little drunk and passed out in the back of the truck at the end of the night when I finally made it back there, and actually slept in a parking garage right outside the arena there. Had a hell of a time. If anything was a little bit of a damper on that trip, it was Gracie. I'll tell you that much, because he was one of my bigger plays for that card. I had a lot of faith in the way that his career was going, but he showed to have some major holes in his game when he faced off against Cub Swanson. He was not able to get that fight down to the mat. I believe he had two attempted takedowns, both failed. And then other than that, Cub Swanson was just teeing off on him. Swanson was outstriking him at least 2-1 in that fight. And listen, we all know that the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu of Gracie is his bread and butter. He's a very nasty Jiu-Jitsu player. I mean, if he gets this fight down to the mat, he's obviously live to pull off a very quick sub on a guy like Jourdain. Jourdain, more of a striking-based fighter. He had the kickboxing background coming into the sport of MMA, but he's been working on his overall craft. And you got to wonder if Jourdain could just implement similar tactics to what Cub Swanson did. I mean, Cub Swanson was an aged fighter even when they squared off, when Gracie and Swanson squared off. I think that's a very realistic possibility. There's also a major X factor with Gracie not having fought in so long. I mean, what has he been doing all this time? Again, that fight that we were talking about was back in 2019. Oh man, those were the good old days, right? 2019, towards the end of that year, that was a fun year. 2019. Before that, Gracie did submit Alex Caceres, and he finished him in the first round there. And quite honestly, that submission carries some merit, carries some weight, because Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy, has really gone on to do some pretty solid things since that fight. So you kind of understand what kind of caliber fighter Caceres was at that point in time, because right around that time is when he turned into a real a dangerous man. And then before that, he had a victory against Tetsuo Kawajiri. He submitted him in the second round. If you guys remember Kawajiri, he fought in the UFC back in the day. A big name over in Japan. One of the bigger name fighters fighting out of Japan throughout the year. So that was a big submission victory too. I believe that was a New Year's fight. It was 12/31. That was 2016. It was going into 2017. I remember that. I remember being really hyped up on the route that Gracie's career was going to be going. But again, the layoff now, we're talking about 2019, it's 2023 now. 3.5 years Gracie hasn't fought. He's 34 years old now. Obviously, he has other things going on. I'm sure he's been staying very active in the jiu-jitsu world. Obviously that's a way of life for him. And, Charles Jourdain, I wasn't really too impressed with how he looked against Nathaniel Wood. He was taken down multiple times. And if he gets taken down by Gracie, or if he happens to go down to the mat with Gracie, I think he's going to get subbed here. We take a look at the submission loss he had against Julian Erosa a couple of years ago. I was going to go one way, but I think I'm going to swap it up here. Initially I was kind of on Charles Jourdain. I really feel that he can exploit Gracie striking and really hurt him there. But I just have this feeling that Gracie's going to get this fight down to the mat and pull off a sub. I don't know, man. I just feel like there's some real potential. And I also think that loss that he took to Cub Swanson really motivated him to understand and learn the sport of MMA even more so, and the art of striking and all that, and wrestling in order to set up, in order to get the fight down to the mat, right? And I have a feeling that we're going to see some of that evolution in his game. And that's why I'm actually going to take Gracie here. I am going to take Gracie. I'm going to say he pulls off the submission. How about that? And he's going to be an underdog. He's a plus 170 underdog here. Jourdain's a minus 210. I just don't like that line next to Jourdain's name. I don't think it's warranted. He's had a lot of up and down type of performances. Yeah, when he's hitting on all cylinders, he's dangerous. He's a dangerous striker. He could definitely hurt Gracie there. If Gracie can't get this fight down to the mat, he's going to be in some trouble. But something tells me that Jourdain gets a little sloppy at one point in time, and this fight goes down to the mat, and I see Gracie sealing up a rear naked choke or something like that. I don't say it with an overwhelming amount of confidence. I remember how that Cub Swanson fight played out, but I also remember the Caceres fight too, where he looked pretty good. So give me Gracie to get the job done. Obviously, I feel there's more value in that plus 170 line. Jéssica Andrade dropping back down to the strawweight division. Just was messing around back up in the flyweight division. We know that she's even fought up in the bantamweight division. She's always jumping around, taking on Xianan Yan, the very dangerous striker, the very physically fit, very, very physically strong Xianan Yan. She's always a dangerous outing for anybody in the division. Andrade coming off a very disappointing loss. Not so disappointing for me because I did have an underdog play on Erin Blanchfield. So, Blanchfield coming through for me there. But Blanchfield, a very different fighter than Yan. I think that this fight favors more so Andrade stylistically. We know that Andrade carries some serious power. She throws those deadly hooks. And so does Yan, though. That's what makes this fight so fun. Yan actually throws some very heavy hands as well. I could see both of these fighters really clashing on the feet. I think there's a possibility that Andrade may have an edge as far as the grappling goes if she looks to maybe get on top of Yan and work some ground and pound. You see that the per 15-minute takedown average is much higher for Andrade. In fact, Yan really not doing anything there with only a 0.87 takedowns per 15 minutes. Andrade at 2.64. There is maybe potential for Andrade to play this fight a little bit safer and sneak in a takedown, rain down some ground and pound. We've seen her really inflict some damage on females down in the mat, although she could do it on the feet as well. But I think that's a little bit of a safer route she can go. As far as the striking on the feet goes, Andrade landing 6.84 strikes per minute, Yan 5.45. Both fighters putting out a good output. Andrade absorbing a little bit more, but again, I think the power on Andrade's side is definitely more dangerous. You take a look at the wins by, although this is throughout their entire MMA careers, Yan having a higher percentage of knockouts, but I'm still going to favor the power of Andrade. I think if these girls clash, I think that it's a little bit more likely that Andrade lands that big shot. That's what I'm feeling. I've always been a big fan of Andrade, as you guys know that. And real quick, before the loss to Blanchfield, a victory over Lauren Murphy, the submission victory over Amanda Lemos. You guys know that was a beautiful sub there up against the cage. She knocked out Cynthia Calvillo before that. Tough loss to Valentina Shevchenko and Rose. A knockout over Caitlin Chikogian, again showing the power that she possesses. You guys know a little bit of what's been going on. The knockout of Rose Namajunas where she slammed her on her head the first time around. It's a very, very respectable resume when you take a look at what the work that Andrade has done. And I am going to be picking her here. She's still very young, 31 years old. She'll only be at a 1-inch reach disadvantage, if you want to call it that. There's nothing really going on there, even though Yan is almost 4 inches taller. The reach is basically the same. And, I'm going to take the future UFC Hall of Famer, Jéssica Andrade here. I am going to be taking her. I do have a great deal of respect for what Yan, the danger that Yan possesses as well. But I like Andrade. That's the route I'm going. And let's take a look at what this betting line is talking about. Andrade is a minus 190 favorite. Yan is a plus 155 underdog. I think that this line should be a little bit closer. This is the type of fight that really has the makings to go a couple different ways. It could definitely be a very close decision as well if one of these fighters doesn't land that fight-ending shot. And I'm not really crazy about taking either fighter with that type of line. Andrade coming off the loss as well. I would like to see Andrade more right around a minus 175 or better. I think she gets the job done, though. All right, we got your favorite fighter, Belal Muhammad, facing off with Gilbert Burns. Stylistically, this is a perfect matchup. Belal Muhammad has really been exploiting some of the older fighters in the division as of recently. Not Sean Brady, but before that. And, using his wrestling to kind of stifle the opposition. And, Gilbert Burns is not that type of fighter. And I think that that's going to play into this fight being a very exciting one. I think that Gilbert Burns could stuff the takedowns, or you potentially see Gilbert Burns trying to press with the takedown here or there. But for the most part, I think that these guys are going to be striking it out. And it should be a fun one there. Just to kind of take a look at some of the work that they've been doing in the UFC here. Muhammad landing 4.47 strikes per minute. Gilbert Burns landing 3.38. Muhammad putting more volume out there slightly, but I do believe that Burns has been putting out the more fight impacting shots on the feet. He possesses more power. He really goes out there and looks to crack his opponent, where Muhammad kind of is out there doing his little wobble dance, flailing, throwing the body kick and these little pop boxing shots. Gilbert Burns, you know what he's about. You know the performance that he had against Khamzat Chimaev. That's really what kicked him back into gear. He was coming off that loss against Kamaru Usman, which some people would actually say, I would say, that he actually looked pretty good in that fight. Even though he got finished, he went out on his shield. He brought the fight early. He cracked Usman early. But then after that, goes back to the drawing board. So that shows you the type of mindset that he has. Goes back to the drawing board and has the performance that he had against a guy like Khamzat, and then goes out there, submits Neil Magny, one of the most winningest welterweight fighters of all time, dominates Jorge Masvidal just the other week in Miami. And Burns, 36 years old, but you need to understand that his physical training is about as good as it gets in the sport, in my opinion. If you follow him on IG, you understand how professional he is and how serious he takes his conditioning. And it's not a coincidence that he's 36 years old and that he's just been getting better and better every fight. Okay, that's just not typical in the welterweight division. You're supposed to see these fighters at this age starting to decline, and that's not the case with Burns. You guys know he keeps one of the best teams around him over at Kill Cliff and the guys he surrounds himself. But let's be honest too, Belal Muhammad, it trains with some of the best in the game. He's always surrounding himself with some of the best in the game. We know recently he spent some time with Khabib and all of them as well, all the Dagestani guys. So we understand that Muhammad is as disciplined as it comes as well. And that's why he's had a lot of the success that he's had as of recently. He's very disciplined. He's very religious. He's not the type of guy that's stepping outside the box, man. He sticks to the plan and he wants the whole gold. And, I just don't see him having some of the success that we've seen him had as of recently, based on the fact that Burns is just a different type of fighter. I mean, take a look at the resume real quick of Belal Muhammad, right? Because he's been very hyped up as of recently. All right, so dating back to the loss that he had against Jeff Neal, victory over Curtis Millender, Takashi Sato, and Lyman Good, and Diego Lima. Those are all lower level fighters. None of those fighters even hung around in the UFC up until this point. I mean, Diego Lima came off the Ultimate Fighter. I think that he gained a little bit more respect based on the fact that he was the brother of Douglas Lima. Lyman Good, a fun fighter back in the day in Bellator, whatever. Leon Edwards, that fight never really happened, the eye poke. And then this was the noise he started to make. He defeated an old Damian Maia, an aged Stephen Thompson, where he was able to grapple him, an aged Vicente Luque. I mean, Luque, it's not that up there in age. It's not up there as much as you would think in age, but he has the mileage on him, and he looked way off in that fight. He was tripping over his own shoelaces. And then the Sean Brady fight was the one big fight. But you know what? In retrospect, Sean Brady was probably just overhyped. So I do believe that Muhammad's resume is a little bit overvalued coming in here. Where on the other hand, I think that Gilbert Burns' recent success really carries some merit. The guys that he's been in there with. And that's not to say that if Belal Muhammad faced off with those guys that he couldn't hold his own. Time will tell. He's going to have these opportunities now here coming up, and it starts with Burns. But stylistically, I like this fight for Burns. I think Burns will carry more power on the feet. I think he has more potential to land a big shot. And, if Belal Muhammad wants to push the pace with the grappling, Gilbert Burns is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt who's an absolute stud down on the mat. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see Burns on top of Muhammad in this fight. But I will say that I actually do see this fight playing out on the feet. I think that these guys are going to strike it out. I think that's going to be not to say that they're grappler versus grappler, but that's how that kind of will play out, kind of grappling versus grappling. They'll kind of stifle each other there and just duke it out on the feet. That's how I see this fight going. And you guys know Bilal Muhammad blocked me in IG. So, we're still not cool. That's Bilal Muhammad's style, man. He's kind of a stiff dude. He's known for blocking a lot of people on IG. He was the teacher's pet back in high school. You guys know what kind of dude he is. Not exactly my kind of guy. Maybe nowadays I've slowed down, but especially when I was younger, definitely like to hang with people that like to step outside the box a little bit. I like to have a good time. Bilal Muhammad, I could only imagine hanging out with a guy like Bilal Muhammad. Imagine going to his house party. You walk in the door, he's sliding in his Kids Bop 22 CD with absolutely no curse words on it, the parental advisory version. He's looking over at you, giving you the grin, trying to put you on the spot. To see if you're kind of digging the music he's playing and digging his party, and he's staring at you with that big old cock eye, and you got to kind of look back at him and, respectfully be like, yeah. But, in the back of your mind, you want to get the hell out of there. He's putting on the Macarena and they're playing Limbo in the living room. And actually, you know what? He's not even doing all that. He's not even that much fun. He's not even doing Limbo or the Macarena. It's way more boring than that. You take a look at their stats here. I think we already did this. I think we're going to cut to the chase here. Gilbert Burns is my pick. I'm a big fan of Gilbert Burns. I think that he's a very solid fighter. He's the definition of a gladiator, man. And all joking aside, you can somewhat say the same for Muhammad. So I like this fight here. Let's take a look at the betting line. A very close line. Gilbert Burns is a -125 favorite. That line just moved. I was just looking at this line couple minutes ago, so slight action going towards Bilal Muhammad's way, as Gilbert Burns was just at -130 on Bovada.lv. Bilal Muhammad right now +104. I think that this line is somewhat off. I think that people are putting a little bit too much merit into some of the recent work that Muhammad's been doing, and I think that Burns should be more like a -150 favorite here. How about that? So I like Gilbert Burns to get the job done here. Muhammad's pretty tough. He's hard to get out of there. I can see these guys going to war for 15 minutes. Here we go. Bantamweight championship of the world on the line as Henry Cejudo comes back to the UFC to retain what was formerly his, right? Aljamain Sterling, the current champ. Cejudo left that belt, never lost. We talked about that earlier. Cejudo winning the flyweight championship of the world against Demetrius Johnson, coming up to the bantamweight division, handling work up there, taking out legends in the game. Henry Cejudo, likes to refer to himself as Triple C. Now he's going to become Quadruple C. All jokes aside, he legitimately would be a Quadruple C. It's a major accomplishment, right? When you think about the gold medal that he had in the Olympics at such a young age, it really set the path for his mixed martial arts career. He's just a fighter that is so disciplined, but even more so, I'll tell you this, the success that Cejudo has, obviously his work ethic is probably second to none, but I think that he has a very, very high IQ, a high combat IQ, whether it's wrestling, fighting, whatever. He has a very high fight IQ. I really admire his IG. I really enjoy watching some of his takes on IG because you could definitely learn a thing or two from a guy like Cejudo. That he's been training a lot of fighters, over the past couple of years while he stepped out of the cage from fighting. And, it wasn't a coincidence that you saw so many of those fighters having the success that they were having. Cejudo is legit. I'm telling you guys, when you hear the way he breaks down these fights and certain aspects of the fight game, you understand that he's just cut from a different cloth. He's a very bright man. And, I know that he is working on the perfect game plan for a guy like Aljamain Sterling, who definitely has some holes in his game, but also does some things very well. Sterling has very underrated wrestling and grappling. His body lock might be second to none, man. If he gets that body triangle from the back, you ain't getting out of that. We've seen that with Petr Yan. His striking's underrated too. He's kind of rangy. He throws some dangerous kicks, some little step-in kicks that kind of keep his opponents at bay, and he kind of strikes from the outside. In a fight like this where he has a 7-inch reach advantage, obviously that could be a tactic that he looks to impose. But again, Cejudo's already working on that, and he's already planned for that as well. Sterling also 3 inches taller. He is the more naturally larger fighter, I would say. But when it comes to the wrestling Gotta favor Cejudo, no question about it. We're talking about an Olympic gold medalist. I think that Cejudo can close the distance and get in on Sterling and take him down. In striking, I mean, Cejudo has really impressed with his striking over the years. I mean, he throws heavy leg kicks. He'll work those calf kicks. I have a feeling that he's going to get in on the inside of Sterling and have success there as well. I'll tell you what, man. I'll cut to the chase a little bit here. My gut tells me that Cejudo steps right back into the octagon and leaves or begins right where he left off. I really believe that. I think that he's going to step in and there won't be any type of ring rust. I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit of a naive way to look at things. I mean, let's take a look real quick. His last fight was against Dominic Cruz, where he knocked out Dominic Cruz. That was, back in 2020. We're talking about a 3-year layoff, right? Or 3 years or so, right around there. That's a long layoff. He's still only 36 years old. The 2 times he tasted defeat were by Joseph Benavidez in an arguable decision, and then the Demetrius Johnson loss, one of the GOATs of the game, which you now know he trains with Demetrius Johnson. So I find that interesting as well. They did him dirty over here. Look at him, the old young buck Cejudo with the little crop top. Sterling putting a little bit more volume out on the feet in the striking department, and also absorbing less. So, I mean, statistically looking good there. As far as the grappling goes, nothing really going on here. I mean, you see Cejudo has a 93% takedown defensive rate. You kind of expect that. Well, Sterling only has a 41% takedown defensive rate. But Cejudo only with a 33% takedown accuracy. I find that interesting throughout his UFC career. But you still got to understand that the grappling is serious. And you know what? Siding with my boy here, Henry Cejudo, man. Quadruple C. I say he walks out the door quadruple C by the time this event finishes up. We take a look at the betting line right now. It is a pick'em for sure. There's an ever so slight lean towards Henry Cejudo's way. He's a minus 115 favorite to come back in Sterling at minus 105. One other thing I do want to point out, although Sterling is a very talented fighter, I just want to talk about some of the fighters that he's been facing off against. And you know what? You can kind of criticize Cejudo's resume as well, because he's been fighting flyweight fighters for the most part, much smaller guys than what Sterling is. Sterling is a bigger fighter. But real quick, TJ Dillashaw was injured from the moment that fight took place. His shoulder was completely out of place. That was a disgusting fight to watch. It should have been stopped immediately. Sterling was basically beating up one of those bob bags. It was just a horrible sight to watch. The Petr Yan fight and the rematch there, excuse me here. So this was going into, so this is the second time around. That was the fight I saw live. That was on the Comzat card. He took Jan's back a couple times. He stifled him and took some rounds. You guys know I feel Petr Yan won that fight. The majority of the fight world thought Petr Yan won that fight, but Sterling did enough tactically to keep that fight very close and snuck that one in. You know that he sold the knee to the head in that fight the first time around. But the Corey Sandhagen fight was probably his most impressive victory. If you ask me, that was his most impressive victory. Some decent names here, Rivera, Munoz, Stamen, but not a lot of big names if you ask me besides that. So I think it's a little bit overvalued is his resume. And if he gets this victory here, I'll tell you this much. You guys know I've been a little hard on Sterling. If he gets this victory, I will say I will give him his full respect as the UFC bantamweight champion. I'll say he's a very deserving champion at that point. If he can go out there, take out Cejudo, I'm not going to just say there's asterisk after asterisk. I mean, he's done enough to gain my respect. And, all jokes aside, I was obviously very upset when he sold that knee and stopped the fight and didn't continue when I felt he could have. Who am I to say that sitting on my chair? But still, I felt he could have, and a lot of other men would have. We see other men do things like that all the time in the sport that we love. But you know what? Sterling is actually a really cool dude. He has a cool personality, and I got a number of respect for him. All jokes aside and all that. So, but I will be taking Cejudo, and at a pick'em line, I guess I feel there's more value on Henry Cejudo there. All right, guys. So that's gonna wrap up the card here. Appreciate all your guys' support. We've been on the mic today, man. I did my free play video earlier, which some of you guys saw for the UFC Vegas 72 card. Hopefully we hit that. It was a big free play. Again, I'm either chew my words here, or you know what, sound even that much better. I've been on the mic all day today. I've been literally just watching fight tape all week, man. I've been just living and breathing this fight stuff, man. And, you know, obviously it's my work and it's my passion, but it's crazy, man. I really live and breathe this stuff. I know you guys do as well. And, you know, it's nice when Saturday cruises in and you get to relax on the couch and just watch these fights take place after we put so much time into dissecting these fights and wondering how they're going to take place. So, you know, I'll just leave you guys with that as we close out here. You know, I know you guys are obviously diehard fight fans just like I am, and nothing but love and respect to the sport of MMA and to the UFC for being the greatest promotion to be put together as far as the sport of MMA goes, and they really do it right, and they give us a lot of joy. I'm sure a lot of you guys would agree there. So it's late. Just wrapping this video up right now at 1 a.m. The NFL draft finished up a little bit ago for all you football fans. Hopefully you guys got the player you wanted. You probably didn't, because it very hardly works out like that. Well, comment below if you got the player you wanted for your team. Comment below. Let me know what bets you're looking at for this card. What fights you like. What value you see. All right. Drop a comment below. It helps me out over here. Catch me on all my social media. And if you're looking to sign up to a new sportsbook, you guys know, don't hesitate to reach out to me. All right, guys. Signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.